And we're on. Kristina Kashtanova, thanks for being on Fitness and Consciousness.
Hello.
I've found you, I think, on Instagram, and I saw that you were a yoga teacher, but once I started digging in more, I saw that you're a crisis counselor, and so I was wanting to start there if we could, and then we can get into whatever else you want, but that's something I've been kind of thinking about a lot lately. So, what kind of, I guess, what kind of crisis counselor are you, and what? Um,
I live in the US. I live in New York City, and in the US and in Canada, we have a crisis text line. It's a text line where people can message from all kinds of devices. Like they can message from the phone, from internet, from Viber, basically like all gadgets. And if most people message if they want to end their life, so it is a suicide prevention line. But there are some people reach out if they have panic attacks or anxiety attacks. And crisis text line, there is like staff in there who works full-time, and there are also volunteers. So I'm a volunteer. I joined a few months ago, and they did 2 months long training that everyone can join and just take this training, and they teach you how to handle those conversations. So now I'm volunteering, and it's been great. It's been a few months. I really enjoy doing it. Yeah, and it's very rewarding.
yeah, I bet it is. I was thinking because it's. I'm listening to a book on CD now called "The Body Keeps Score."
Yeah, I actually met the author of this book, believe it or not.
Yeah, you what did what I didn't catch what you said.
I met the author who wrote this book.
Oh, you met the author?
Yeah, I met him a couple of months ago. It's one of the best books I've read. It's really great.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with it. I'm listening to it on CD, and I'm on, I think, 9 of 13. So it's starting to talk about like the movement practices more, like this scientific foundation is pretty much laid, and now he's talking about more the what can be done like through movement. And so I guess like what kind of recurring themes are you seeing? Like, because what has me thinking about it is like I keep like having people like pop into my life that have had, especially like women, it seems like friends and stuff. We'll just kind of stick with it, thinking like that way for now. But they like childhood trauma is super common. It's crazy how common it is. So maybe they were like raped as a kid, or they were molested or something as a little kid. And then I thought it was interesting in that book, The Body Keeps Score, those kids, the women especially, it sounded like it's more common for them, are more likely to be in abusive relationships, to be like raped later on in life. So it's like, okay, so getting molested as a kid, you're more likely to get raped later on too. It just like how common it is what is truly disturbing. And just like the several like friends that I'm thinking of, the stories there's a lot of similarities. So when you're could you just like speak on that? I mean, I don't know if I have an exact question for you, but I guess like how often do you see that kind of stuff coming up, like for adults that?
So what I can tell, first of all, I have to say that Even though it seems like it's more common in women, it's actually male suicide rate is much higher than females. And I think the biggest problem is that men usually just don't complain, they don't speak about it, but they are affected as much as women. And sadly, men are usually just go ahead and take their life, and women are more proactive in like seeking help and talking about it. But because in men it's so expected that men can deal with emotions by themselves, that is why we have such a high suicide rate in men. And it just like yesterday, again, the zombie boy took his life, and it's just the statistics is just awful. And what can I say about childhood trauma? And the book that you mentioned, I think it's just, in my personal experience, I work with a lot of people who went through childhood trauma and who try to make a change in their life. I would say it's just very common that people who had childhood trauma, they're just in a risk group, because subconsciously they may think it's an okay way things can be. Because like right now I'm working with a woman who was raped 2 weeks ago, like in real life. And the problem is that it's almost impossible to convince her that she isn't guilty of what happened. She thinks she's the one to blame. And this is what happens if you are a child. Your brain begins to kind of try to make sense of the situation, and they think, oh, it must be my fault, I shouldn't have gone there. So that's why it's such an important thing to heal those traumas, so it doesn't happen again.
So is it mostly the women that are calling into your...
No, not really. It's actually quite even, women and men. I feel like because people can remain anonymous and they don't even have to say their gender, unless, I mean, I usually never ask a gender from people reaching out, but we do ask first name if a person wants to share. It just feels more personal if someone is addressed by their first name. So I wouldn't say there is no statistics really of the gender, because we try to be very neutral, and it can be anyone. It can be a male or a female. So.
And so when you're speaking, you can probably at least most of the time tell whether you're talking to a male or female. Are they calling in about, like, do you think, is it like women are usually calling about this or this, and men are usually calling about something different?
No, to be honest, I think you can't really tell, because right now gender is such a fluid concept. It can be a man or a woman. It can be someone or transgender. It can be anyone. So I wouldn't say I am usually able to tell the gender. I usually don't even worry about it as much, because we focus on crisis, not on gender or race or age. The only thing that is important is kind of to identify if it's a child, because if it's a child, we need to make sure that if a child is neglected, we mandatorily report that. But other than that, we don't really care which gender it is. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, that makes sense, especially since somebody that might be trans, they have a high suicide rate. So if you're out trying to like figure out whether they're a male or a female, that might not be helpful.
Yeah, and I also feel like it's not very correct to guess those parameters, because if a person wants to specify the gender, it's absolutely fine. Some people request a particular gender counselor for religious reasons, or maybe they feel more comfortable with particular gender. But to be honest, I've never had a particular request. Every person who reached out was fine at talking to me. And obviously they do know I'm a woman because I use my real name and the female name.
And is this a national hotline, or is it for New York, or?
Yes, it is a national hotline. It also covers Canada, so it's in the USA and Canada, and anyone can reach out.
Yeah, what like recurring themes are you hearing? Because like in my mind, I mean, I could be wrong. So if somebody wants to, if they just like really want to kill themselves, then I mean, maybe it's probably wrong, but just like kind of like playing off this way of thinking, I'll just do that. So I'm thinking if they really want to do it, they're not going to call you and try to have you talk them out of it. They're just going to go do it. Like it's like,
you know, I was of the same opinion when I started. Actually, when I decided to be a crisis counselor, I had no idea it makes such a big change. I thought that's exactly how I thought before starting. But actually, of 100% people who reach out, only 2% require active rescue, which means a person has means to end their life, and they have a particular plan and they're going to do it in the next 24 hours, because in most cases it is possible to talk them out. And I think to answer another question, usually especially in summer, people mostly feel isolated and lonely, misunderstood by people around them, depressed, helpless. So I would say just being crisis counselor and doing it for such a long time, it brought such a big perspective to me about just reaching out to people in my life and just asking, maybe someone wants to go for a coffee or for a walk, and just being there at least for some circle of friends, because a lot of times people say, yes, I do have friends, but I feel like no one cares about me. And then when we start talking more, it actually, I can see that people do care, but just a person is afraid to ask for help and kind of feels isolated and is afraid to be seen as vulnerable. So it's all about being comfortable to be vulnerable and asking for help.
yeah, that kind of reminded me of like there was a poem that somebody wrote in that book we were talking about, Body Keeps Score. And it was something like somebody goes to the psychiatrist or something like that, and because they want to talk about themselves. And then so if somebody can like listen while they just like try to talk about themselves for a while, then they can care about other people again. But I think sometimes like maybe it's like a mom with 3 kids, or you know, like how much time does she get to just do whatever she feels like doing? It's gonna be next to zero. And if the kid has some kind of special needs, it like multiplies the stress and time. And so I would, I forget how it went exactly, but it was something like that. Yeah, if I can just get all this stuff out about me, then I'm ready to like get back to you and everybody else. I just need to. So do you think like a lot of people that call in that
Definitely. Sharing just to get it out, sometimes it helps. So when I start talking to people on Crisis Text Line, I ask why they reached out, and it's not always a suicide. A lot of times it's just a crisis. A person has anxiety, or they're stressed, or they are depressed, or they broke up with someone, like all kinds of things. So usually I asked what made them reach out today, and when people start exploring, and we start exploring what is going on to understand what's happening. And then at some point, I always ask, how can I be of help today? And a lot of times people say, is it okay if I just share, if I just talk to you? And of course it is absolutely fine. And usually by the end of the conversation, we come up with some coping mechanisms, and this crisis text line is usually empowers people. We don't say what they shall do, we just guide them to find their own solution to their problem. So like, we can refer some resources if they ask for it. For example, like mental health resources. There are a lot of phone apps just to manage stress and just to manage everything. And there is also meditation apps, which I'm very proud of, that we also suggest. And everything is free, of course, because a lot of people can't afford a therapist or something like this.
Yeah. How long are most of your phone calls?
It's usually an hour.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Because when I used to drive a cab, and I think it might be part of my cab driving. I did it for like 7 years. That got me into podcasting, because I learned people want to tell their story. I mean, I did a lot of medical transportation. So I'd be taking, I'd have regular customers. So I might take the same old lady to her cancer treatments once a week, maybe every day for a week, every day for 2 weeks, or once a month for a long time, or whatever it is. And they're like, some of them almost pretty much almost everybody I learned like wants to tell their story. And one woman, she got into the car. She might have been 30 years old or something like that. And she starts crying. And I think I was taking her to like the immigration office, like where people like go to get their stuff figured out. And she's crying. And so I'm asking her like why she's crying. And she said that she didn't want to talk about it. And I was like, are you sure? And she's like, yes. I'm like, okay. And so then I dropped her off. And then she was like mad at me because I didn't keep asking her what was wrong. And I was like, well, I mean, I was like, so I tried, but maybe in that case, I didn't try too hard. You don't know how much to push. I never saw her before ever. And, it's like, she's like kind of like telling me in a way that she has something going on by crying in my car in front of a complete stranger. And then like that first attempt didn't work. Are you sure? Okay, well then I let it go. And so do you see like when people are calling you, that like they tell you that there's like, maybe they'll like give you like some reason for calling, but then they give you like little hints at what's like to dig deeper. Because like when I'm doing the podcast, a lot of times, okay, I was having you on. At first I started, okay, she's a yoga teacher. That sounds interesting. Crisis counselor. That's interesting. So I start digging into that, and then I'll hear you say something, and then it kind of, people like give like hints at what they really want to talk about, but they don't lead with it.
Well, because we this crisis text line, it's text line, which means people don't call, they text, so they message. So I can't really hear emotions, and I can't really hear the voice and what condition they are in. Maybe they are crying, maybe they don't. We always make sure that the person who reaches out leads the conversation. because otherwise it would feel very like we don't know the full story, and it's difficult to make understanding of the story just by texting each other for 1 hour. So I do ask questions. I do ask them open questions, which kind of leaves room for them to explore. And a lot of people share very openly to what is going on. I would say there are some people who I can tell are in a much, much, much more difficult place, who write very little. There's people who write you one word and I can tell they are in a lot of pain. So I feel like when I talk to those people, I just become so much more personal, and I say that I feel worried about them and that I really care, and they can be completely open because it's anonymous. No one will ever know anything we talk about. And I also let them lead the conversation, even if it's a person who writes very briefly. You can still do something, and you can still assess risk, which is basically this things we do where we ask questions about suicide plans and means they have and time frame they have in mind. And if all of these questions are affirmative, then we will try to rescue this person. But if not, if, for example, a person has means to take their life, but they don't have a plan to do it today, then we just ask them to maybe take this means to another room and ask if they will be happy to do it while we are chatting. And a lot of people say, yeah, I did take it away. And then we keep talking, and we keep just making sure that the person changes their mind and finds some other way.
Yeah, you mentioned like I think you said rescue. Like if they have like it's all what's that? What do you mean?
So if a person reaches text line from their phone, technically we can track them. It takes time for police to track their location, and we don't do it unless it's absolutely necessary. As I said, in 100% situations, only 2% is those active rescue situations. So in this 2%, it means a person has a suicide plan, they have means to take their life, they have time frame, and they're about to do it, basically. Or they are doing it as we speak. I did have such situations, because when that is happening, I have to talk to them the whole time. Like, I have to keep them engaged, and we always ask if they want us to rescue them. And regardless of answer, if they are already taking their life, we would try to find their location and send police and ambulance to rescue them. And there are a lot of times when it is successful, and there are also not as many times, but very sad times when we are just too late, and it's very sad.
How much does that weigh on you when it's too late?
So, you know, I have a lot of friends in my life who lost someone to suicide. This is the reason why I started doing crisis counseling, because my closest friends lost someone very close to them to suicide. So I was dealing my entire life with someone who was grieving someone to suicide. So when I started doing crisis counseling, I actually felt very well compared to other crisis counselors. I never felt too sad. I always felt like I'm doing my very best, and then until one day I lost someone, and I'm pretty sure the person we were rescuing, we were too late, and I didn't expect it would have any effect on me really, because I think it's just my life. But I did take 2 weeks break, and I was processing a lot. Like, I was thinking a lot about it, and I was thinking, it just, I didn't expect I would take it so close to heart. But yeah, I did. And after 2 weeks of break, I returned back, and I just kept doing it, because I feel like there will always be someone who we can't save, but at the same time, there are still those 98% of people who didn't do it just because we were talking to them.
Yeah, I could see how that could really drive somebody crazy. Oh, if I would have just worded this a little bit differently, that probably would have helped. Or, oh, I probably shouldn't have used that word. I should have used. So is that the kind of thing, like, where you kind of like beating yourself up that way, like you should have worded something different, or what? Like,
That is strange, because I don't, because I feel like I kind of follow the protocol that we have, and I can't really say things that are out of protocol. Like, there are things I cannot say, and there are also things like that are expected from me to say. So I don't really feel like I could have done something different. It is just, suicide is such a difficult thing, and just imagining someone going ahead with it, and uh, just like imagining someone in being in so much pain. This is something that just made me feel very sad, and like I didn't feel guilty, or I didn't feel it was anything I could do differently, but just thinking about a life being lost, and that there are so many people who take their lives just because, I don't know, just because of the way things are, and hopefully it will change.
yeah, that's pretty wild. What do you think happens when we die?
Well, I actually I have a theory, and it's not 100% my theory. It's actually my best friend's theory, but I really like it, so I use it in my life. I think we are all made of energy, and if you are a good person, when you die, all your good energy comes back to the world. And if you're a bad person, it just, there is nothing to come out. So that's why I try to live my life in a way that I'll have something to just like go back to the world. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think I get you. I don't know where I got it from, but like some book, it was like, imagine like your good acts, like your good things, as like a white substance, and your bad stuff as a black substance, and like these, like, so you have like the good karma and the bad karma,
Mm-hmm.
and so you try to like have more of the good than bad, obviously.
Yeah.
And that does make sense. Where are you from?
So I was born in Russia, and I lived in England for 5 years, and now I live in New York.
Yeah, very cool. I thought Russia from your name, but no, I wasn't sure the accent didn't.
Yeah, it's a mixture.
um, so you teach yoga also, right? are you still doing that?
My full-time job is photography. I'm a photographer. And I did my yoga teacher training a few months ago. It's Kundalini yoga teacher training. It's more like for the mind. When I was studying my teacher training, my goal was to teach my close friends, those people who were who needed it. But after I finished my teacher training, I tried to teach in my photography studio. So when someone comes and I can tell a person is stressed or they need to relax, so they feel quite kind of like worried or nervous about a photo shoot, I always suggest if they want to do a short yoga class, and I was doing it this way, and it was amazing because people would do a little bit of yoga and then it's like a completely different person. They feel great, they feel confident about themselves, and we get so much better pictures.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like that. So the Kundalini yoga, are you talking about Yogi Bhajan style or?
Yeah. Well, I practice every style of yoga. Actually, pretty much every style of movement. My dream is to become a circus performer, but I'm very far from this dream. I did join acrobatics classes, and I do love trampoline. I think that's my favorite right now. I do practice hatha and vinyasa and all kinds of yoga. But I did teacher training in Kundalini yoga, mostly because it was very beneficial for my own mental health. And I just thought it will be interesting thing to learn. And there is a teacher, she is 75 years old. And I had such a strange feeling that I shall do yoga teacher training because she's so old. And I did it, and after this, the yoga studio got closed, and she's now not teaching in New York anymore. So it was the right thing to do.
Wow. Yeah, it's funny how that stuff works sometimes.
Yeah.
So the Kundalini yoga, is like mostly for your mind.
Yeah.
And Kundalini has been a subject of interest of mine for a long time. So can you, like the Yogi Bhajan style is supposed to be like the fast way to activate. So can you like talk about like how it works and like maybe like if there's like some common misperceptions of what it is or what's your take on it?
Well, I think I will share my personal experience with Kundalini yoga, if it's okay.
You said you will or you will not?
I will.
Oh, you will. Yeah. Okay,
my
good.
personal experience.
Yeah.
So I was practicing like regular yoga classes, vinyasa yoga, back in London. And then one day I accidentally came to the wrong room in my studio. And I saw people wearing white, wearing turbans, and I was like, what the hell is this? I was like, this is weird. This looks like a cult. So I asked, is this yoga? And the teacher said, yeah, it's Kundalini yoga. And I was like, well, I'm curious. I'm very skeptical. I was like, these people look so strange. And I said, do I need to dress like this? And they said, no, you can just be yourself. So I came to the class, and usually when you practice Kundalini yoga, you close your eyes and you practice it with your eyes closed. And for me, as a photographer, I use my eyes all the time. So it was literally the first time in my life where I kept my eyes closed when I wasn't asleep for a whole hour. And I felt amazing about it. The practice was quite challenging. Like, now I know it was actually easy, but at that time I thought, oh my God, I almost died. It was very painful, in my opinion. And I was like, I'll never come back here. This is weird and painful and very strange. So I left the studio after the class. And on my way to the bus stop, I felt such a feeling on my shoulders. It was almost like all my problems like left me. I felt so good. I was like, life is good. I didn't feel high. I just felt very content and very relaxed. And when I came back home, it was late evening. I went to bed, and usually I'm quite insomniac. But that night I just slept like a rock. I slept so well, and I got up very early and very rested. And I thought about it, and I thought, okay, this looks really weird, so I'm not gonna tell any of my friends I actually go there, but I'm gonna go there. So I started going to Kundalini yoga classes every week, just once a week. And it had such a good benefit on my mind. I feel like the practice itself, it's a little bit uncomfortable. You feel very uncomfortable, so you learn to be comfortable being very uncomfortable. So then you start dealing with life situations much better. I became much more patient because I used to get annoyed. I never acted on it. I just kind of was passive aggressive about it. But deep inside, it always kind of almost like ate me from inside if someone would be too loud or someone would do something I don't want. But after those classes, I noticed how patient I actually became, and I became very tolerant to pain. Like, it was incredible. So I wasn't planning to do yoga teacher training. The only reason I did it was just because I knew if I don't do it, it may be just too late to learn from my favorite teacher. So
Yeah, very interesting. I hear like different Kundalini awakening experiences, and like I've had several experiences myself that are kind of like not really what the books say, and some stuff is like kind of like what the books say, and other stuff is just not what the books say. Nothing that I've read, and I've read a lot of that stuff. When I was practicing like what was like called Kundalini yoga on the like DVDs or whatever, and a lot of it like you're holding your arms up for a long time, and
there are some careers where you do and you do a specific breath.
yeah,
Stuff like, yeah.
breath of fire, is that what you mean?
Yep.
Can like what's up with the holding the arms up for so long? Because I'm thinking like
it's just there are it's like it's called kriya. There are exercises, and there is one exercise that is called ego eradicator. So, and you hold your arms 60 degrees, actually, like this. And Yogi Bhajan, he says that you have a lot of nerves under your arms. It's actually like there are a lot of nerve centers over here. So when you hold your arms like this and you like pump your navel in breath of fire, it's really good for your nervous system. It's like most of the exercises in Kundalini yoga, they are directed to nervous system. So you become very kind of, I mean, this is a very, very uncomfortable. After, I don't know, after 1 minute, I feel very annoyed and you feel quite irritated. But the thing is, it's like you cannot injure yourself just doing this. But it does feel like it's a real pain, like the discomfort is so strong. But when you keep doing it, your nervous system begins to adjust. And then when in life you have some kind of difficult situation, you're like, you know what, I've done ego eradicator for 11 minutes. I can handle pretty much anything.
Yeah. So you've done it yourself for 11 minutes? Is that what you said?
Believe it or not, but when we were doing a yoga teacher training, we had to do this for 62 minutes.
62 minutes without putting your arms down.
Yeah, but it was kind of like at the end, and it's called Sat Kriya, and it was a nightmare. And trust me, after that, we all felt very happy with life. All problems disappeared.
It reminds me of a story. I think it's like a Russian joke. The guy that wears his shoes 2 sizes too small.
Yep.
You know
Yep.
the one I'm talking about?
That's a little bit, I would say. There is something close to Kundalini yoga. But I'd like to say that just not to scare people who are listening to this, when you go to Kundalini class, it's usually not more than 1.5 minutes, not 62 minutes, no. I didn't expect that would happen at teacher training, to be honest, because most training was quite like fine. But I think by the end it was fine because we were so physically fit, actually. We were so used to all this stuff. So it didn't feel that bad. But now it's been a few months since then, and I'm like, I can't imagine. We did it, and I survived that.
Yeah. The way you explain it kind of makes sense to me. And I kind of thought about that before. Like it's this like mental endurance as much as anything, like get like frustrated and mad or this is stupid. But then that's just like that, you know, you can be at work, maybe you don't like your job, but you have to do it. And you can just do it and be like more calm.
Yeah, more calm perspective to life.
Yeah. And you can either do your job all day and you can be mad all day or you can be peaceful and do the exact same thing. And
you know, we always have a choice. There is this book I really liked, Bhagavad Gita.
Mm-hmm.
And it says, well, basically the idea is you always have a choice. You can either leave the situation. If you don't like your job to the point you can't stay there, then you can leave it. But if you are there and if you choose to stay, then you need to stay and accept it. And because this way, it's kind of like you're not indecisive. You are making a decision and you're going with it. Maybe it's a temporarily decision, but still, like, why feel frustrated if it was your choice to start with?
Yeah. Human mind's a funny thing, and it's. I was thinking about it a lot, and especially having you come on. And I didn't know the exact questions I was going to ask, but I knew I wanted to dig into the crisis stuff. And it's like why do you think there's so much suffering? Why do you think this what do you think it's all about? Like, why do you think there's?
You know, my personal, I just can tell from my personal experience. I feel like this technological change in our lives, it is so fast. It's so quick, and it's like not just past few years, but in general. Imagine that people used to live as communities and everyone was helping each other. It's like we were so dependent on each other. We live like as big families and as big communities, while now not only we live separately from each other, but we are also divided by this technology. Like everyone is on their phones, and people spend so much less time just doing those things that are so important for humans. So I just feel people are very bad at handling this, because every time I have this situation in my life where I go somewhere and I'm with my friends and we don't have a connection to social media or to internet, and we are just all together, when I return back, I feel so good because I'm connected. I don't feel isolated. If I feel lonely, I would just talk to the next person to me.
Mhm.
But with technology, it's so difficult. And I feel like a lot of people feel depressed, isolated. Also, the jobs, like there is such a change in jobs that people have to almost fight for every job. It's so hard to find a job. So there are so many, it's just the society is changing, and it's just all this change. People haven't adapted to it. And I feel like this is a big reason that is so many suicides are right now.
Yeah, it is really crazy how common it is, like the um, military people coming back from war, they survive that,
Yeah,
but they don't survive
yeah.
this regular.
I feel like a lot of it is because very often there is not enough there is not enough resources and support for those people, because it's like in military they know what they're doing, and it's like there is a routine and there is a regime, and they may live like that for so many years, but then they come back and it's such a void, and again they don't have this community around them anymore, because in military there is a community and you are never alone, and then you end up just with plenty of free time, and yeah. So,
Yeah, do you get military people calling into your hot or texting into your?
um, you know what? When I think about that, actually, I have more people who are partners of someone who has PTSD after military, and they reach out. So it's called third party. It's when someone calls because their loved one is suffering and they want to get help. Because I feel like military people, they they um, they don't want to ask for help. They just suffer silently, and then they would just take their life silently. But thankfully, there are partners who just reach out and they say, "My husband or like my wife is having those flashbacks. Is there anything I can do to help?" And then we may send some resources that they can check out and maybe find help. And the book you mentioned is one of the best books about PTSD. So yeah.
Yeah,
I recommended it to so many people you can't imagine, maybe like 100 people.
yeah, I've recommended it to a couple. I think I've listened to it before, but now I'm listening to it again in kind of a different. Um, I think the first time I was expecting more like fitness stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of how I heard about it, more like a healing movement kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then but this time I had like a little bit of a different. I wanted that, but I had like a little different mindsets when I started listening to it. I was more like interested in the trauma part of it and less about the fitness part.
Mm-hmm.
But so like how many? I know you have to get going here pretty soon. Like how many people are using this text line? It actually took you like several times of saying that for it to like click in my mind, because I'm thinking people are like calling and you're talking to them on the phone, so you're able to hear, but you're texting, and that's, I mean, that's such a common way to communicate. It's like the majority of how we're communicating. And I think like a lot can get missed in text or misunderstood. And so having like these exact things you're supposed to say, not say, makes a lot of sense. But what was my question is, how many people are using this hotline?
To be honest, I can try to see how many people use Crisis Text Line. Let's see. I never asked myself this question.
You said you're normally on the texting with someone for an hour. How many?
So I can simultaneously talk to 3 people.
Okay.
So when you reach certain amount of hours, for example, when I will reach 200 hours or 500 hours, I can actually talk to more people. But to be honest, I wouldn't talk to more than 3 people because I need my full attention to be on 3 people, and I don't think I can handle more than 3 people at a time.
Yeah.
But you know what? Actually, we had a shortage in crisis counselors recently. It was crazy. I would come at night, and night is the time when most people reach out, and the line would be like 300 people. And some people would have to wait. I had one person who was waiting for 2 hours, and I was like, oh my God, if I wanted to end my life, I would be gone by then. So I started recruiting people among my friends. I wrote on social media and I said that we need volunteers. And I found 10 volunteers among my friends. And I think
It says you're
okay.
Okay, we're back on. We had a little technical difficulty.
Okay.
So you were saying?
I can talk to 3 people at a time. And when I reach more hours of crisis counseling, I technically can talk to more, but I wouldn't talk to more than 3 because I need my full attention on those 3 people. So, and I found statistics to answer your question. Listen to this. I'm quite impressed. So in October 2017, Crisis Text Line exchanged 50 million messages.
Whoa.
And it's in 1 month.
October.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's quite a lot of people. You know what I have to say? Do you know this TV show, 13 Reasons Why?
No.
So it is about suicide, and it's a TV show that prompted a lot of suicides with the first season. So after first season, there was such a big spike of suicides among teenagers that when they filmed second season, after each episode, they were leaving kind of contact details of our crisis text line. So after that season, we had so many people reaching out, so many people. Some of those people weren't even going to end their life. They were just so disturbed by the TV show that they wanted to talk about it because it was really, really disturbing. So, yeah. And now I feel like as soon as someone high profile ends their life, there is always kind of a spike of people reaching out and you know, sharing how they feel.
Wow. Yeah, that's all. It's just amazing. The numbers just blow my mind. I know you have to get going. You have somewhere to be. So, is there any final thoughts you'd like to leave us with?
Well, if anyone is in crisis, they can reach out. If you are in the US or Canada, it's 741-741. You can text. Or if you are from somewhere else, you can feel free to message me on Facebook or anywhere, because I don't mind talking to anyone who is feeling like they need someone to talk to. Like, no judgment, completely anonymous. I really enjoy doing it. And I don't want anyone to end their life. So.
Yeah, well, very good. Yeah, I did share that post. I saw it when you were asking for counselors. I shared that post, and
Yeah, thank you very much.
yeah, I'm not on Facebook very much, but I did see that. So yeah, it's an amazing work that you're doing, um, and it seems like with you said just a couple months of training.
Yeah, and it's completely free. And I feel like personally, when I did this training, it taught me so much about how to talk to my friends, to my family, and how to deal with difficult emotions of people around me. I just wish every person could have such training in that school, because it's very useful. Things you can say and you can ask. Yeah, it's really helpful.
Yeah, and how do you do the training? Is it online or?
Yeah, you usually apply, and in the US or Canada, when you apply, you need to provide that you are like not a sex offender, and you are like, you do have, like, I think you need to have social security number or something like this. And you submit the form, like you answer different questions, because they need to make sure that crisis counselors can actually handle this type of work.
Yeah.
And then they make a decision. And and you also have 3 references, like usually people you worked with, and they write references about you. And after that, you just wait, and they have few trainings every year, and it's completely online, and you have tests, and you have an exam that you need to pass online. And it's not all of it is automatic. Actually, there are people on the other side who check what you're doing and how you are responding. So when I was doing a training, I actually felt it was very, very good, because I even had to redo a few tests, because they would give you like how you can improve, and it was very, very helpful. Yeah. And there is a manual that they give to you, like it's a PDF, and I think I sent this PDF to at least 50 people to just like read it, and because they needed it to like be there for their loved ones. So it's very helpful information.
Yeah, I'm gonna check it out myself and see. I don't know how much time I could actually donate if I got approved for the whole thing or whatever, but I would definitely check it out to see. Like I just requested um, uh, nonviolent communication,
Oh, that sounds great.
and the same guy wrote Talk Peace or something like that from the library. It was recommended to me from someone else, and um,
I
so
have never heard of it. Maybe I shall check it out.
yeah, it's big. What's his name? Marshall Russell or something like that. I could be wrong on the name, but yeah, it's just called Nonviolent Communication. There's a book and there's workshops, and
Mhm.
it's popular with like a lot of yoga teachers. That's how I found out about it, is through yoga teachers.
Oh, I will check it out. Thank you. It
So
sounds interesting.
yeah, and just the words that we use can make a huge difference in somebody's life, quite literally for you. So
Definitely.
I will let you go. Thanks for being on. And was there anything else you
No,
wanted
that's
to?
it. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah. All right. I'll talk to you for just a second when I'm done recording.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Thanks for being on.